So, my family has a little lake house in central New York. There isn't much to do there except for, well, go in the lake that's by the house. That and try not to talk about other family members on the lake because it carries to the house. I haven't learned that the hard way at all. I return there in the summers when I can. I'll be going there again this summer following General Assembly for a few weeks, early warning. For years, the only non-lake entertainment apart from books, games, and the daily racing forms for Saratoga Racetrack. The only way to have fun there was a small TV and the attached VCR. Now, for those of you who don't know what a VCR is, you really won't know at all what I'm about to talk about. So just sit back. VCRs played magnetic tapes with copies of films, and they spooled the tape from one side of the tape to the other and displayed the movie on the connected TV. And the magnetic tape, though, was finite. It wasn't like streaming we have today because it had spool. So sometimes, there were movies that were so long, they needed 2 tapes. Remember this? And for those of you who don't know what a VCR really is, get ready to have your mind blown. These 2 tapes were separated by what? The intermission. That's right. 10 points down in front. For years, movies were like theatrical productions, and the filmmaker would include, blessedly for the needs of many of our human needs, an actual intermission between the 2 parts. And that's the spot when the second tape would be loaded to finish the film. Now, at my family's lake house, there were not a lot of tapes. But there were 2 that I can see clearly etched, summer after summer after summer after summer after summer. I'll stop into my mind. One is Top Hat, the Ginger Rogers, Fred Astaire film. But you can do a lot worse. All right. The next sermon's on Top Hat, clearly. Chose the wrong one. And the other, much larger and looming from the tiny wooden basket on the floor with cobwebs between its woven strands, was the great cinematic achievement of Cecil B. DeMille, The 10 Commandments. Oh, yes. Yes. The Fitzgerald family was very big on the 10 Commandments. And that cover is unmistakable. It's Charlton Heston as Moses, and he's standing on the rocky face of the mountain, holding aloft the stone tablets, which at that moment, this fantastic selfie was taken. These stone tablets are being irradiated by twin bolts of lightning and are inscribed with... Exactly. I knew I recognized you all from my lake house. That's good. To this day, whenever I reach for something on a high shelf, which is pretty often, I imagine whatever it is I am holding over my head being shot through with divine lightning. And so it shall be written upon these guest towels, thou shalt rinse thy feet of that sand before in the dwelling place thou goest. Living with me is a real delight, I promise. You should have seen what happens when I get the air mattress down. Okay. But in the movie, alongside Charlton Heston, his great Moses, windswept Moses portrayal, was another memorable performance. Yul Brynner's Ramses. Yes. 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 He made quite a name for himself playing roles. Anyway, that's another sermon as well, for anyone who's seen King and I. Ramses was the ruler of Egypt, the powerful empire that the Hebrew Bible explains had enslaved the Hebrew people Moses came to lead. Now, last week we discussed how well anyone who studies the Bible should know the story of the Hebrew people eventually being freed. But this week, we are going to look a little more deeply at how that came to pass. Because it wasn't easy, especially on Egypt. See, Moses and God loosed plagues on the Egyptian people, blood and locusts, hail, many sorts of plagues that you can sing all about in April when we will do the Passover Seder right here where you are sitting. Stay tuned. But it was the night of the final plague, the plague of the firstborn son, when Ramses called for Moses at the nighttime. All of the firstborn sons of Egypt died in the night. And a great wail went up from the nation of Egypt. So Ramses did not see any other option than to free the Hebrew people, whose God seemed very powerful. And in the film, The Ten Commandments, Yul Brynner ends this conversation with the line, "So let it be written, so let it be done." Now, maybe it's the liberty that the movie took with the story. Maybe it's the kind of fussy way Yul Brynner swishes his costume and his enormous headpiece in the movie right before he says it. But for some reason, this line, "So let it be written, so let it be done," became, frankly, a joke. See, the only dialogue more stilted than the dialogue in the movie The Ten Commandments is the actual dialogue in Exodus. No offense to the authors of either, but no one is giving anyone any awards for naturalistic dialogue. So, when Yul Brynner uttered this line, it caught on fast. It was really funny to people. Whether ordering meals at restaurants or making dinner table pronouncements to one's family, following pretty much anything anyone said with the pronouncement, "So let it be written, so let it be done," got a laugh. It was the "that's what he, she, or they said" of that generation. Now look, I don't write the jokes, folks. That was the joke. But maybe the humor of it, maybe, like most humor, comes from something deeper. Because later in the story of Exodus, and of course later in the second tape at the lake house, that wily Ramses, what happens? He changes his mind. Yeah. All of a sudden he realizes how much money and labor he is losing by letting the slaves go. So he calls his troops to pursue the Hebrew people through the desert, and it's there that Moses, Charlton Heston, parts the Red Sea in all its cinematic glory and power to save the people, to fulfill his last call to "let my people go." In a way, this is a kind of comedy, a kind of very human humor, because after all, human and humor come from the same root word. Ramses finds a deeply, deeply human truth that many of us know in our souls. Some things are easier said than done. So let it be written, fine. So let it be done, that's a camel of a different color. Easier said than done. I mean, how many times have we walked out of church or finished a magazine article or read a book or seen a movie and decided to take some action to change our lives, to change the world maybe? And how many times did we really get to the gym that week? How many times did we really get up early and meditate on a beach that morning? How many times did I really take the action I wanted to take? Let it be written, but I didn't make it so. And there are reasons for this, right? I mean, I'm pretty comfortable, my life. The gym is hard. My bed is really comfortable. It is much more comfortable than the ocean in the morning to meditate. And what's even better than all of these things is I have these friends that I can talk to about all these things that are troubling me in the world. And I like having them around me because they affirm almost all the things I'm used to saying or believing. It's fantastic. Oh, it's really comfortable, my life, in these ways that I live it most often. And I know, it is a tremendous privilege for me to be able to say this. But, if I'm being honest, still in my heart, I am troubled. Much of what called me into ministry, other than jokes about VCRs, what called me into ministry to others is the hope of helping people to make a real, appreciable change in this world. Not only because it would help the world, in fact, less so, but because it will help the people trying to make the change. That's the trick. Now look, Moses had easy. Not only was God a super powerful God at that, talking to him, telling him, ordering him what to do, God was backing up what God was saying. God brought down plagues on the Egyptians and made Moses out to seem like one heck of a powerful force to be reckoned with. I mean, Moses' God slew an entire generation of firstborn sons. That is horrifying stuff. And then, even then, it was not enough to stop Ramses from trying to take and keep what he wanted: free slave labor. And we talked about the lure of those promises last week. We looked at what was written in the pages of the Hebrew Bible for millennia, that God freed our forebears for slavery, clear as the path through the Red Sea. And we talked about generations of clergy, of followers of that same God who saw fit somehow to exploit members of the human family in the very same practices as the Egyptians. But now with the advantage of time and perspective, we know that the comfort that came with this exploitation was traded for the steep price of a deeply, deeply troubled soul. Soul of a nation, soul of time, soul of ourselves. For example, Thomas Jefferson, for whom a Unitarian Universalist fellowship in Virginia is named, wrote of his terrible guilt at retaining persons enslaved on his lands in the last few years of his life. He was in anguish over whether an ultimate judge or God would find him unworthy for lacking the courage of the conviction he felt in his soul against the practice. And so recent work on Thomas Jefferson has seen him as a kind of representative, still representative, of Americans and the legacy of enslavement of black persons in this country. Prize-winning historian of U.S. history Gordon S. Wood writes this: "The Jefferson that emerges out of much recent scholarship resembles the America many critics have visualized in the past 3 decades. Self-righteousness, guilt-ridden, racist, doctrinaire, and filled with liberal pieties that under stress are easily sacrificed." Who better than Thomas Jefferson, who said the sweetest words of freedom, many know, penned perfectly the Declaration of Independence, but even the sweetest words of justice, words of freedom, sour in the mouth when actions fail to follow. Easier said than done. And we know what we say. We may even believe about what a life of dignity means for all people. In 2 places as you enter our building, we have the words written of our beloved Eve principle, outside and inside. And it's a lovely sentence, filled with hope and filled with the unifying power and focus it should have to accountably dismantle supremacy in our midst. But compared to the sentence on our walls, there are pages and pages and volumes being written of the ways that the legacy of enslavement of persons in this nation is still being written. Unequal rates of incarceration, unequal disenfranchisement of voters, unreal attempts to alter voting maps, unbelievable violence still being perpetrated on the bodies of the sons of another generation of our human family. Unbelievable. To take all this on at once feels impossible. I know how you are feeling in your guts right now. It feels hard, uncomfortable. The more and more we learn, the more and more we take in, the more that is written in volume after volume, the more we feel like we have to put these volumes on the shelf to deal with later. For what is more comfortable? For many Unitarian Universalists, and really to be fair to humans, than to put all the information, all the theories, and even some suggested action in a book on a shelf, read it, and walk away. I do it. I haven't done everything in all of the books that we have that are suggested. I know, and I'm not the only one either. It's only when we reach, when we stretch to that high shelf where so much has been talked about, written, so much has been said, and take hold of what is there, that the twin lightning bolts of compassion and justice inscribe new ways of living, new ways of learning, new ways of being a human being. Compassion shows us truly, truly, truly the honor of the gift of life we so beautifully experience, especially in this place together. You better believe it is hard to be here to talk about these things on this island and not go out and get in the water and just let it all wash away. I feel it. And in addition to compassion, justice shows us truly, truly, truly the ways that the honor, the privilege of that life can be used to make the experience of others in this life better, more just, and filled even more with dignity. It is wonderful to make changes for others in the world, but it does magnificently more for us in the doing. Ramses just couldn't let it go, even though he said he would. Because power over others, controlling others, if you think your bed is comfortable, controlling others, really comfortable for some. Entire institutions are built on this comfort, are perpetuated throughout the human world, throughout the natural world, based on this very idea, for truly necessity is not the mother of invention. Comfort is. And it's starting here. I have seen it here in this church already. Doing the work beyond the thinking, beyond the reading, beyond what we think we all know and what our friends all tell us is true. For those of you who have taken, for instance, the Interrupting Racial Microaggressions workshop offered every few weeks here, which was created and is now taught by the very people sitting around you, by the very members of this church. They literally took books off the shelf, sat down, put them into action, saw what was written in them, and then got it done. I have some friends who are not from this church who've taken this program, and it made them very uncomfortable. So congratulations. And trust me, it was easier said than done. And the question we now face as a church, really as a united community, a church whose attendance is growing on an island whose population is declining. A church whose fostering relationships around the island is now paying dividends in more and more access of ways we can help others. The question that really faces this church in the coming years is, what else might be hard? What else might be uncomfortable? What else might seem beyond our reach alone? And what are we going to do about it anyway? What might be easier said than together we can get it done? Friends, intermission is ended. It's time for the real fun to begin. So let it be written and let it be done. May it be so. Blessed be, and amen.